For a new motion system project I'm working on, I decided I want to try something I've never done before, winding my own linear motors. And that means spinning a lot of copper. So, instead of focusing on getting the rest of that motion system designed, I decided to make myself a winding tool. I wanted something that would give me a bit more control than my hand drill. And part of the control I wanted was over the number of reps in each coil. I even got myself a little touch screen to control it. My coil winding journey is still very much underway, but I've been pretty pleased with how this winder's come together, and so I figured I'd show it off a little. Plus, making a video lets me extend the distraction even further, so if you're watching this, you're enabling my procrastination problem. And I thank you. Enough self-justification. Let's see how this thing works. The spool of wire to be coiled is on one side, and the mandrels that hold and shape the coil are on the other. The wire passes through this printed guide in between them, and when the motor turns, it draws wire from the spool and wraps it around the mandrel. To make sure the coil stays nice and tightly wound around the mandrel, it's important that there be constant tension on the wire coming from the spool. To achieve that, I intentionally baked some extra friction into the axis that's letting the spool spin. My magnet wire came on these spools that have hex-shaped bores through them. Magnets. Just always gotta be different. But these hex-shaped bores are perfect for applying a torque to the spool, and therefore a tension to the wire. Almost like it's on purpose. I decided I was going to achieve that torque through friction. So I put in these little adapters that have hex extrusions on one side and a conical recess on the other. That's right, yet another opportunity for one of my favorite ways of making a rotation axis. Balls and sockets. The line between the center of the ball on top and the ball on bottom defines my rotation axis. And by adjusting the amount of preload on the stack, I can adjust the amount of friction. In the nominal design, there's an intentional gap left at this joint. Closing that gap during assembly turns this top bracket into a spring, preloading the axis. The friction at that ball to plastic interface is proportional to the preload force, so I can adjust my wire tension by printing different top caps and changing that nominal gap. The tensioned wire travels through this printed guide here to aim at my winding area. The small opening of the guide is aligned with the winding area, and it curves out to try to accept wire from both ends of the spool without running it on sharp edges. Granted, it's plastic, so the wire'd probably win that fight anyway, but better safe than sorry. On the other side of the guide is the real business end, which can look a bit different depending on what I'm winding. For some windings, I want them integrated into a structure, and other times, I want them standalone pancakes like this. That means these mandrels, the bits that contact the copper, may change, but the gist remains the same. And the gist is that I want a spinning parallel gap for windings to go in. That gap is set in the thickness of my windings, and how parallel it is defines how consistent the winding thickness is across the coil. To achieve my spinning gap, I split it into two sides, a driven side and a passive side. On the drive side, a DC gear motor provides the actual driving, and a radial bearing takes up the load coming from the wire tension. Regardless of what the drive mandrel looks like, it interfaces to the motor with a nice snug fit on a D-hub. That D-hub transmits the torque to whatever drive mandrel is above it. On the passive side, the mandrel's basically just a turntable. It provides a flat datum for the end of the coil, and then when it's done, the whole top assembly comes off to release the coil. Because I'm applying adhesive while I wind, I need a non-stick surface on the mandrel, so I put about a 2mm thick layer of silicone on top, plus some tapered holes to keep the silicone from releasing from the wrong end. The superglue I've been using has been sticking to the silicone much more than I'd like, but it does eventually release. I'm still tinkering with ways to improve on this bit. If you have any secrets to save me from my struggles here, looking at you, Mr. Bishop, please do let me hear them down below. Up above those silicone bits is the little housing that holds the turning aspects of the turntable. The backside of this passive mandrel has a conical recess, with a partner printed into the cap above. Yep, it's another ball and socket. That cap also houses a roller bearing, and the combo of the ball and socket joint here, and the radial constraint here, fully defines my axis of rotation for my little turntable. And the goal of this whole setup on the top side is to try and maintain parallelism between these two mandrels. As I mentioned before, the parallelism of these mandrels directly defines the parallelism of my coils. So, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to take a little stroll through my constraint loop and what's defining that mandrel parallelism. I'll start my stroll with the flat on the surface of the drive mandrel being normal to the axis of my motor. The axis of my motor should also be normal to the mount interface for that motor, and that motor interface should be parallel to the cap interface on both sides. Now we're in the home stretch with the turntable axis being perpendicular to that cap interface, and finally, the passive mandrel surface being perpendicular to that axis. The good news, those all should be relatively deterministic, repeatable constraints. The bad news, the accuracy, which is actually the resulting parallelism we care about, is much less delightful. Every one of those connections introduces a little tolerance. Stack enough of them together, especially from 3D printed plastic, and suddenly your two parallel surfaces aren't. But the reason I call the determinism the good news is that this allows me to shim things into alignment, if I'm patient and want it enough, but I'm not, and I didn't. but the coils seem to be coming out okay despite my laziness. Maybe once I get the rest of the process more dialed in, I'll take the time. Okay. I'm done nerd sniping myself over constraints. But all that focus on the mandrels means I skip the feature that actually counts the spins. This cam lobe right above the roller bearing. Each time the cam rolls by, it clicks the limit switch and signals the MCU that a rotation's done. And for that MCU, I went with this ESP32 dev board with an integrated touchscreen. That allows me to set my target number for windings, either incrementing by tens or popping open a little numpad. Then, just simple buttons to start, pause, or reset the cycle. I'm not going to dive into the electronics, because 1, they're not very interesting, and 2, it ain't pretty. Now that we've covered all the bits and bobs, how about taking a look at how it makes a coil? For this one, my drive mandrel's going to live with the coil, so it just sits down in the drive like so. I then feed my wire through a little pilot hole here, pull it tight, and then tuck it out of the way. I put a dab of glue there just to pin things in place, and then it's time to bring the turntable into position and tighten things down. Now, before I start spinning things, I want to get myself some better access for applying glue. So I pull the big red handle and... oh, right, the big red handle. On the first version of my winder, I designed it to mount on some 2020 extrusion, but I found I was often wanting to rotate it to get better access. So I decided to put her on a spit. I can put it at 0 degrees to get everything set up and started, and then rotate it to 90 while winding to give easier access for applying glue and keeping an eye on things. And that's exactly what I'm going to do now for this one. Then I'll set this for 150 turns and hit start. I pause it every 20 to 30 wraps to apply a bit of glue. Getting glue throughout the windings is important so it'll hold its shape once the wire tension's gone. When the counter hits 150, the motor cuts off, and it's time to wait. I just let it sit for a while to cure, then pop the passive side cap off to free the winding. If I ever revisit the design, I'd probably rotate the cap on this side 90 degrees and integrate one side of it into the wire guide. That would give me more access to the work area and would keep glue from dripping on the upright. But that would need a pretty ground up redesign, and I'm happy enough with everything else. So don't worry about me, I'll just be over here gluing my fingers together.